Hello and welcome to this quick tutorial on installing WordPress. Before you actually do install WordPress, there's a couple of things you need to do. The reason for that is that WordPress is very popular. It's reckoned that around about 1 in every 6 news websites are using WordPress. In turn, that means it attracts hackers. If you remember, back a year or two ago, Apple were claiming that the Mac never got hacked. Well, the reason for that was that it wasn't big enough in the market share, and as soon as they started increasing the market share, hackers and virus writers and spammers and all sorts of things found it worth writing stuff for Apple, whereas before it wasn't worth the effort. Same goes for WordPress. Because it's popular, it just attracts people. And because there's so many sites, the law of averages says that they can get into at least some of them, especially if you're careless. So, a couple of things that you can do to basically reduce that dramatically. First is don't use admin as your username. Chances are, whatever installation thing you do, it may well prompt you and say admin. Because you're an administrator, it makes sense, but because it's the default, it probably means that, well, I guess 80 or 90% of WordPress sites use it. Some of my early ones do, but I've learnt since. And it just dramatically reduces the chances, because what'll happen is the hacker will try admin, it'll try a few simple passwords, and then they'll go on. There's also other things which we'll show in one of the next tutorials on the plugins that you can do to get extra help, but help yourself by don't use admin. Just don't use your actual name either. Use something that you'll remember or that your browser will remember, and don't make it related to the site either, because again, that's easy to guess. So it could be your pet's name, anything like that. And the other thing to do is use a secure password. Now again, some programs will give you some of the installation routines will give you a password suggestion, but what I do is go across to a site that generates a secure password generator. I'll give you the URL for this in a PDF that goes with this course. A couple of things I do. Password length, the default's to 8. I go for 12. 12 seems to be very strong, and the other thing is it doesn't normally include punctuation, so I tick the box. Just to show you the kind of ones, I'm going to select that down to 5, and it'll generate passwords for you, and you can see there that they're pretty unguessable. It'll be a mixture of upper and lower case, all sorts of things in there, punctuation, weird characters, well, at signs often crop up, equal signs, exclamation marks crop up, dollars, equals, dashes, all sorts of things that what they do is they make it a lot more difficult to hack the password. You'll need to save it somewhere because you won't be able to get it back from anywhere else. All you'll be able to do is reset it. So that's what I do before I do any WordPress installation. I choose a username that isn't admin and go to random secure password generator and generate a free password to use. I'll normally go with the first one because, well, they're pretty random, as you can see from that. And what that means is they're difficult to crack. All you'll do is just tick the box that says remember me and let your browser save the settings, so you don't have to remember N7 SW$ equals U, Y equals PHU, fortunately, because you never would. Okay, then next video will show you how to actually install using, well, you choose the one that, there's two popular installation routine, the Fantastico and the Softaculous, and I'll show you in a separate video how each of those work. They're both easy, they're both similar, but that's the next stage. Okay, see you in the next video. Okay, if you're using something like HostGator, then you'll have a one-click install for WordPress, and HostGator and quite a lot of other control panel ones use a thing called Fantastico Deluxe. So all we do is click on that and you get the Fantastico installation screen. Down the left, list of all sorts of different ones that all sorts of different programs you can install using it, and the one you're after is WordPress. Now I've installed several, so I'm going to pause the thing while I click on that and get it to a screen that I'm happy to show you, because it's got lots and lots of domains on it. So I'm just going to click pause, and the bit I didn't show you, there's a screen in between where it says new installation. I clicked that, then you get a drop down list of different domains. Now as I said, I've got so many different domains, rather than showing you a huge great list and me grey them out, I've just selected one. Normally you'd leave install in directory blank, but because I'm going to be bear with me. Because I've already got a WordPress domain in this one, I'm going to ask it to install in the demo directory. Admin username, as I said before, you shouldn't use one that's called admin. So I've just typed in my username there, and then I've copied and pasted a very random password from the random password generator. Again, admin nickname, whatever you're going to use, and then it asks you for your email address, which I'm not going to show you, and also off screen it asks you for the site name. You can change that later, and the description you can change later. Then there's a little button that says install WordPress, and basically that goes off to that screen, and you then click on finish installation. As you can see, it's done it into a demo thing, because I'm not going to keep this. Finish installation, basically it's done everything. So we can then go to that link and see the, again that won't be the right thing, so do that. And that's another thing you're going to see quite regularly if you use the automatic install. Let's move that screen slightly. Lots of updates. What this is that Fantastico and other installation routines don't keep everything up to date, but that's fine. Just click on the updates thing, select everything, update plugins. It'll go ahead and do that. Return to WordPress updates, themes, tick everything, update themes. And when you've done that, you may or may not have to go through this. It depends when you're doing it, how up to date your host's version of Fantastico is. And then WordPress update, you've got nothing in there, so you don't need to worry about the bit that says take a backup. You're supposed to read that. I tend not to, but I will show you about that again in one of the plugins I do that kind of gets over that. So update now, and that gives a fresh installation of WordPress. Click in the site, we've got a demo site, hello world, and a few other posts. So that's it. That's as easy as it gets with installing WordPress. Then you have to configure it, and we'll come on to that in the next video. Hello. Your web host, if they don't have Fantastico, might have something called Softaculous, and depending on your control panel it might look as this one does down here on where it says that, or it might look like this where it actually just tells you that you can install various apps, and it just gives you the popular ones rather than making you jump through hoops. Either way, when you click on that, if you click on the Softaculous link, if you get that option, then it will give you all the popular ones there, and one of those is WordPress, and you click on install, which will then lead you to the option of where you want to install it. Normally you'd leave HTTP. Site, I'll scrub that out on the actual video. Install in a directory, I'm going to call it demo, WP demo. Database name, it'll give you just accept the default unless you've got any preference. Prefix, leave as default unless you've got any preference. Site name, demo site. You can change these later anyway. Site description, whatever. Don't enable multi-user unless you really want to. Now it'll give you a default admin name. Don't use admin, because just whatever, and the admin password I'm going to copy one I generated earlier from the random password generator. So that's we'll actually generate a random one for you, but I prefer to use the other one. And then wherever you want the admin email to go to, select that, standard language, and then just click install. And you can also do email the installation details, which I'd strongly recommend, to your address. And then all that happens is you get that. I'm not going to install this because it's not a site I want to install WordPress on, but then all that happens is you just go to the regular WordPress site, and we'll pick up on the next video from there what you do once you've got a default WordPress installation. So that's it. It's easy. It's not quite one click, as they'll doubtless claim, but it's pretty close. Okay, welcome back. Once you've got WordPress installed from Control Panel, and to be honest, if your host doesn't offer that kind of installation with Fantastico, Softaculous or whatever, in other words, if they leave you to your own devices and have to FTP, either you're geeky enough to do that or you need a new host. It's as simple as that. So you'll then come to the default WordPress login screen. So you've got your username and the password. Click login, tick remember me, click login. If you're on Firefox, you'll offer to remember the password. And as I probably mentioned in one of the previous videos, depending on where I took you to, you've probably got updates to do, because there almost always are. Simple as ticking the things saying update plugins, update themes because they seem to change, and then upgrading to the latest version of WordPress. It really is just click what you need to do. You don't have to do that all the time, but if it happens, it happens. Then it's the process of, you'll get that welcome screen. Great, don't really care. The dashboard, we're going to work our way down the left hand side of the different things you need to change on the dashboard. It will give you that sort of hint thing, but I tend to just go down. So posts, we've done the updates bit. Posts, hello world, we'll show you what that looks like. It really is just, you got that, this is your first post, edit or delete it. We're going to delete it, and the comment will actually automatically get deleted. So what we're going to do, click on the thing that says trash. There's no are you sure, but if you went back to trash, if you got it wrong, you can restore or delete permanently. So if you press refresh there, you'll see that it says no post found. That's fine, that's what you wanted. So we now have, that was trash, but in the regular posts, no post found, which is what you want. Add new is where you'll add new posts later, but we'll do that later. We're just going to work our way down. Categories, up to you. The default on WordPress is uncategorized, and it's probably best to edit that and change it to whatever your topic is. So whatever your topic is, especially if you don't press enter before you're ready. Update, and so that will then mean that the default, and you change the thing that says slug as well. It's not a, keep that all as one word, but it is, as it says, it's a URL friendly version of the name. Normally lowercase, contains only letters, numbers and hyphens. That'll make it look a little bit prettier. Tags, you're not going to use at the moment, so that doesn't matter. Media you use later, but that doesn't happen. Links, now if HostGator had installed an up-to-date version of WordPress, version 3.5, these wouldn't appear. But if for whatever reason your host is a little bit sluggish, as HostGator was here, go into links, select all, tick all, select delete, click apply, and that will get rid of them. But chances are, if it's a brand new installation, you actually won't even have that, so don't panic if you haven't. That's fine. It's just one of these, WordPress changed from version 3.5, it's no longer in there by default. But if you're upgrading from a previous version, then it will be there and you just get rid of them because they're just ones you don't want. Pages, it'll give you a sample page. Again, you can view that. Just says this is a sample page. Get rid of that because you don't want it. Comments, there won't be any comments at the moment. Appearance will come into another video. Plugins will come into another video. Users at the moment, it'll just be you, my username, whatever you decided. It's my personal email address. Don't use that, I probably won't reply. You can add new users, but you probably won't, unless there's several of you keeping the blog up to date. Your profile, I tend to leave everything in there as default. It's very rare I'll change anything. Tools, we're not going to use at the moment. Settings, we're going to cover in another video as well, because this one's getting a bit long. So that's the first things you're going to do on WordPress. Delete the default post. If it gives you links, it probably won't. Delete those. Delete any default pages. That will give you a nice clean installation with everything basically not found. That's exactly what you want. Okay, we'll see you in the next video. Okay, welcome back. I've got rid of the link thing so it's closer to what you'll see if you've got a fresh install of WordPress. And we were kind of working our way down the left hand column. Going to ignore appearance for a minute, going to ignore plugins and move on to settings. The reason for doing that is it's typically something you'll end up forgetting otherwise. So on settings, we've got the site title. It'll put in just another WordPress site unless you choose something else. The URL is just a test one I'm using. That won't be there by the time you get to see that. Email address, whatever. So nothing really to change in settings. General. Writing, at the moment, nothing particularly to change, but that will probably change. Reading, that will definitely change, but we can't do that yet. Discussion, now I tend to change a couple of things. Comment spam is something that happens with WordPress a lot, so I'll tick the box that says an administrator must always approve the comment, and I'll untick the box that says they must have a previously approved comment. The reason for that is that quite often a spammer will put in a test comment that's quite innocuous and you'll approve it, and then they'll put in all sorts of rubbish thereafter. So unless you get lots and lots of comments, and in which case you've got a popular blog and you'll take other steps, tick that one, untick that one, press save. Media, don't do much about. Permalinks, that's the other thing that I always change. And I'll do a custom structure. We'll put this in the PDF that comes with it, but basically post name, so that will just put the post name rather than the default on WordPress, which is p equals whatever, which is just something no good to man or beast. So post name is the easiest thing to put in. It's what I always put in. As I said, I'll put that in the PDF that accompanies this. You don't have to copy and paste, try and copy it from a video, which you can't do. So that's it on the settings changes. Appearance we'll cover now. If it's a brand new WordPress 3.5 install, you'll only have the 2012 theme in, because I've got other themes lurking around. But 2012 is the one that will get used, and it's the default one. Stick with it for the minute, and we can change it later. Widgets, what'll happen, let's move that across, is that you'll get a sidebar which has a load of rubbish in it. Search, I leave. Recent posts I tend to leave. Recent comments drag out the way. Archives drag out the way. Categories drag out the way. And meter drag out the way. And that will happen by default. So that just gets rid of them there. So we've got recent work posts, hello world, because I'll get rid of that. Okay, I've got rid of that. That was just because I had to do a fresh install of WordPress and I'd forgotten to clear those out before we started. So that's it. There's not even a header on that. So go on to appearance again. Just show you where that is. Header. there's no default image in there, so you'd need to upload one if you decided to use one. But that's what the site will look like out of the box, ready to customize. Very simple, very easy, and we'll move on in the next video to all the different plugins that I'd suggest you install. So we'll see you in the next video. Okay, WordPress is highly customizable, which means that it has what it calls plugins. They change the functionality of WordPress, sometimes for the better, usually for the better, sometimes for the worse. Because WordPress is so popular, you can find a plugin either for free or for not very much money to do almost anything you want. By default it comes with two. One is an anti-spam thing, which is good, but it's now chargeable unless you're just personal use. So we've gone to the plugins menu, install plugins. I delete that one because I don't want to cheat on them, and a thing called Hello Dolly, which I've never known anyone use in living memory. I delete that as well. So it's a clean slate. Next is to select the Add New, and I'm going to show you how easy it is to install a plugin, and I'll go through the ones that we do. Search plugins. Contact Form 7 just puts a nice contact box in, and once it's installed you can see how fast it does to install. Activate it, and so that means we can do a contact form, which we'll do in another video. At the moment we're just adding plugins. Next one I'm going through in pretty much alphabetical order. Exclude pages from navigation, or exclude pages. What that does, literally does exactly what it says. Sometimes there's things that you don't want in the main menu bar in the pages. Typically it's things like a privacy page which you want, but you don't want to be in the main menu because it's something that just needs to be there. So exclude pages just gives a tick box on the pages thing on WordPress that says, do I want it there? And you tick if you don't. So that's easy. I'm quite an old-fashioned one on stats. I'm going to use Jetpack Lite, which is WordPress's own stats package. Needs a little bit of activation on it. That particular one is activated. Normally you'd have to go in and just log into your WordPress site, but because that particular domain's already on WordPress, it knows, and that will just give you, not this minute, but it'll give you extra stats. Let me just check. Sorry, plugins activators, but yeah, beg your pardon, I have to log in to connect to WordPress to log it in. So on the right hand side of that screen it just says connect to WordPress. That just gives you my login details for WordPress. I'm not going to show you those, so I'll pause the video for a sec. Okay, I've authorized that with WordPress. If you haven't got a WordPress account, it gives you all the information you need to create one and then activate. I don't use their particular short links, I use a different one. We'll come on to that in a sec. So next plugin to add is a thing called Limit Login Attempts. You know, remember I said that WordPress is popular, therefore it gets people attacking it. Limit Login Attempts doesn't give people many chances to do that. So I'll show you all these different ones in another video. All we're doing on this one is showing you the quick install. Spam-free WordPress, that's what I use instead of Akismet. It works okay. You have to have an authorization key, so you click on the thing that says enter your free license key, and Firefox remembers that for me. So instead of all the sections saying this needs whatever, it's now activated. Very quick, very easy. If you remember I said about database backups and things, WordPress database backup, I think it's called that. No. Let me find the right one. Okay, got it. What happened there is they've changed the name from the one they show on the control panel of checking on to a different one. I'll give you the right one in installation. We're going to activate, we'll come back to settings in another video. It's just easier to activate as you go. You can bulk action, but I just find it easier. WordPress SEO is the next one. WordPress SEO by Yoast is the one I use. It seems there's other ones out there. Different people have their own favourites. This is the one I've honed in on recent installations. It seems to be the best supported, and you can either allow tracking or not. And that's not happy about something, so fair enough. Not worried about that particularly. Huge SEO, I'm blocking access to robots. Yeah, that's because it's a demo site and I got rid of the tour. 2 more to go. You remember I said I didn't use the default WordPress shortener, I used WP Shorties. It gives me some quite nice information. And one final one that I use is yet another related post plugin. What that does, that'll give you links at the end of each post to similar posts. It's quite good at working out what's what, and it just gives people a chance to browse around your web. You've noticed I'm clicking all the signs that say I'd like to read more, because generally I don't really care. So that's the plugins installed. The next video we're going to come on to what you actually do with them, how you set them up properly. Hello and welcome back. We're now going to look at the different settings that I said we'd look at. So, and the customization of some of the plugins. So we'll start in alphabetical order. Contact form 7. Settings, there isn't really very much to do here. Basically there's already, it sets up a contact form and it gives you what it calls a short code. So we copy and paste that, go across to pages, click on add new, and we're going to go for a contact form. Just call it contact, copy and paste that in, come down to the Yoast plugin, because if we leave it without changing it, it will put the site title in as well, meta description, contact. Again, because otherwise, and you'll see with Yoast, we'll cover that in more detail, but that's that. Just off screen there's a button called Publish, and once you press that, view page, as you can see, it contact form, and that will then go off. Now the other thing there is leave a reply, so we need to change that. So go back to edit page, and across the top right is a thing called screen options. Open that and it'll be as either discussion or comments, I never remember which. So clicking that, right, okay, down the bottom there's a bit that says allow contacts, allow comments. Get rid of that basically. Click on an update button, which is just off screen, so it changes. The first time you post it'll be a publish and then it's update, and what that does is it gets rid of the edit things there because I'm logged in, but other than that it gets rid of comments, because you don't really want comments on a contact page. So that's the first one. We'll come back to the dashboard and plugins. Exclude pages from navigation, nothing needs to do in there. Jetpack Lite, nothing needs doing there. Limit login attempts, I tend to leave as default. You'll find it across somewhere in settings. Limit login attempts. Basically what it does, it allows them 4 times to try. If they haven't, this also applies to you, so you need to remember your password, but you should have that saved in your browser or somewhere safe. So they get 4 retries. If they don't get in those times, they're locked out for 20 minutes. That'll stop most hackers, and basically it increases in, well, basically in time until they get locked out for half a day. for a day, and then the things reset after 12 hours. What you'll find if you, I find that box too scary, the email to admin, but you can do that, and you'll get notified when that's happened. But basically, it does its job, and you don't really need to change in the defaults. Spam-free WordPress settings, again, the only thing you need to do, I've got a license key there, but if you haven't got that, there's a little thing appears in the bar at the top and says go off and get a license key. You need to do that with it. They don't spam you, they don't send you lots and lots of emails or anything like that. And pretty much, although that says needs attention, it doesn't. I don't really care about the stats on spam, as long as it's stopping most of it. So that's that plugin. WordPress database backup, yes, that does need a change, so that comes under one of those. Bear with me a second. I should actually read the bit there that says go to Tools Backup. Ignore all the tick boxes and things like that. Ignore the backup now. Go for scheduled backup. And I go for weekly. Not worried about, well, actually in that one I might be. So if there's other things that it could potentially include, it will offer to include them, but it's quite intelligent. And what that will do is just, once I've set it up, once a week it will send me a backup. As you can see, scheduled backup options saved, and it will send everything, which means if all went wrong, if anything needed to happen with WordPress, if someone hacked the site or anything like that, I've got a fairly recent backup. If you're changing your site daily, then put it daily. If you're changing it more often, twice daily or even hourly. But weekly I find is usually okay, and then I go back to my inbox every now and then and clear out all the old copies, because you don't need the old copies, you just need the most recent. So we're working our way down the list. Got as far as database backups. We'll come on to the other three settings. We'll probably spend the whole of the next video on WordPress SEO, and then we'll cover the other two. So see you in the next video. Okay, hello and welcome back. WordPress SEO, this is the Yoast plugin. If you're using a different SEO plugin, the settings will be similar, but Yoast is the one I get on well with. It's well received, and it seems to work quite well. Right, this is the default that it gives. If you wanted to go back to the default for any reason, you'd click the Reset Default Settings button, but you're probably not going to do that. I've allowed tracking of anonymous data. I'm happy enough with the guy that does the plugin. I haven't donated, but you can do. He's quite happy, obviously, if you do. By default, it leaves the advanced part of the meta box. Whatever, again, defaults are good. If you're on Google Webmaster Tools or Bing Webmaster Tools, or you've got an Alexa identification ID, put the data in there. What the Alexa identification ID does, if you want your website crawled by Alexa and have rankings and stuff on it, then you need an ID, and you can either upload a file to your website or just fill in that box. So you put your IDs in those as appropriate. Titles and meta descriptions. I tend to tick force title rewrites, even though it says you don't necessarily need to do that. What that does is if you use a separate title on Yoast, which I suggest you do, it'll just make sure that happens. The meta settings, no index subpages of archives, go for that. Use the meta keywords tool, no. Use the no ADP, no. And no wider. Right, meta keywords tag pretty much is obsolete. It was around in the early days of the internet, and about 3 minutes after it's invented it got spammed. So pretty much any search engine ignores it completely, so it's not really worth your time putting keywords in. No ODP. Open the directory dmos. If you're lucky enough to get in, tick that box, because Otherwise, Google and sometimes Bing will override your description with the boring one that the Open Directory DMOS puts in. Similarly, if you pay for a Yahoo directory, tick that box, but generally speaking, you're not going to need that. Clean up the head. I don't normally tick that, but I've ticked a couple of things, so save settings. You clean up the head. What those will do is just make the code in the header slightly smaller. So there's that bit. Okay, social. Add Facebook Open Graph data is ticked by default. I don't tend to do anything with that, but it could be. So leave that, and if you've got anything to do with Facebook Open Graph where you even understand what it is, put stuff in. Front page settings, tend not to use. Twitter, if you want to add that, tick it, but and if you want your username, put that in there, which will be your Twitter name without the @ sign. I tend to leave all of those as default. XML sitemaps, they're useful because that saves having a separate plugin, and again it's ticked by default. What will happen is that every time you create a new post, it will amend your sitemap, which is useful because that means the search engine robots stand a better chance of crawling around. I'll typically also tick the ping Yahoo and ping ask, just because you can. It excludes media by default. Normally you'd leave those included, which is what happens if they're not ticked. And it's worth getting rid of categories, tags and format because they just clutter up the sitemap. So tick those and then go for save settings. Permalinks we've already set to whatever it was, so don't need to set anything in that. Internal links I don't tend to go to. Enable breadcrumbs if you want to do what's known as a breadcrumb trail on a site, which is another way of navigating around it. You can. You'll see that a lot on things like Amazon where it says you're in this category and a subcategory of it or whatever, but for a smallish site, not worth going for and pretty much ignore. RSS, WordPress by default creates an RSS feed. Stands for really simple syndication. You don't need to know much about that. You can add stuff there if you understand what you're doing. I tend to leave it as is. Import and export. If you've got a default Yoast thing, you can do it. Again, I tend not to use it. Edit files will almost certainly be scary, and you wouldn't want to do that. Generally speaking, what the files though are robots text, which is basically line by line that says allow any robot to come in. Don't let it crawl around the CGI bin, don't let it crawl around any of the back-end WordPress stuff or anything else. So the defaults are sensible, leave them as that. htaccess file, scary thing to amend, and if you do, on your own head be it, because if you get it wrong it can mess up your whole site. So that's the Yoast SEO plugin. We'll show you how to use that on actual post in another video, but that's it for the default. Not much to change, just a couple of things if that. So, and then that makes your site ready to be search engine optimized. It just puts all the ducks in the right row to be used. So a couple more plugins to talk about, which we'll do in the next video. Okay, welcome back. 2 more plugins to go. WP Shorties and yet another related posts. I'm actually going to do them in reverse order because yet another related post has a settings page, as you can see there, but I never touch it. So basically I just use its defaults and it comes up with some quite good things, so I'm happy to let it go that way. But WP Shorties puts its own soft warp thing in, because that's the name of the people that do it, and that brings you across to that. What you can do is paste a URL into there, and I'll find one to paste. Okay, I've got one copied, and once you click away from that field it'll give you a really ugly short URL, so change that to something better and click Save. I'll move the screen across slightly. Please configure the option it's saying there. Okay, so that means I need to go on to options. I've forgotten about that. And basically, even though it's given you defaults, it doesn't put them in by default. So save the changes. Back to the main page. It's now configured. And if I click on that, copy link location, I've just pasted that into Notepad so you can see what it does. But that will, if you want to use it in your post, I find the easiest way is to right click and copy link location. I'm in Firefox, Internet Explorer has something similar. You can then click it just to check it goes to the right place. It's going off to my website, so yes. And what will happen now if I move the screen across and press refresh, it'll show that's been clicked once, and the logs option will also show that's been clicked once. It will show which IP address clicked it. That's my current IP address, so you can get a little bit of data there. It'll show you the date and time it was clicked. So if you're one of these control freaks that likes going and checking logs all the time, you've got them with this. But the main reason for it is it keeps your links nice, neat and tidy, and it means that if someone's clicking on, for instance, an affiliate link or something like that you want to disguise, or you just want to take them off to an Amazon link which is long and stupidly ugly, then you put the long URL in there and give it something meaningful as a name, and then you've just got an easy way to show it. So that's all the plugins I normally do. What we'll do in the next video is just show you how Yoast works in practice on a post and a page, and the last couple of settings that once you've got a post and a page set up. So we'll start looking at that in the next video. Okay, welcome back. I'm going to show you next how to put a post on, because some people aren't always sure with WordPress. The dashboard will actually nowadays give you right to your first blog post, or what I tend to do is go across to posts. I usually click on that and then click on add new. You can go direct to add new, or it's up on that screen there. They know that people find it. I'm going to move the screen across a bit so that you can maybe see, and I'll squash the screen down a bit so you can see what it is. Okay. You'd put your post title in, so post title goes here, and then you need to put some text. And what I'm going to do is just put some Latin text in, just because it's easy to generate, because there's sites that do it, so bear with. Okay, the Latin's meaningless, it's just what typewriter, well, printers and things have used as placeholder text effectively. So we've got it's called lorem ipsum. If you want to generate it just for clients or whatever, you can just find loads of sites that will generate that. Ignore that, it's just there to put some quick content in rather than you watching me type stuff out. That's the title I'm going to use, and that's the main post. Now coming back further down, as you can see that it's got it as a demo site at the moment, so SEO title is the first bit that I put in, and you can see it change there. The focus on that page is going to be that. Wouldn't normally be, but that's it. And then the meta description is just going to be, normally you would craft this, because I'll show you what it does in a second, but let's put some gibberish in. I'm sure Romans would disagree with me, and that tells me that I've got less characters left. Now, right, what that'll do, meta description is limited. Actually, let's go back to the title. The title's limited to 70 characters. I'd go with 65 rather than 70. What happens is that Google will cut it off after that. Well, in fact, before that usually. So 65 to 70 characters is your title. 156 characters is the meta description. Now normally what that would be I'm cutting the wrong bit there, a call to action, but you can see it will appear there, and because it knows that's your focus keyword, it will do what Google does, which is bold the bits that happen. Once you're happy with that, you can either save as a draft, which I'm going to do, or you could have published. That's the next bit I'm going to talk about. If you remember, we set the permalink up, and that's a bit long, so I'm going to cut that down to size, change that. Up to you whether you do that or not, but if the URL goes on for too long, I find it a bit yucky. And then the power of Yoast is, once you've set all those, you can also do a page analysis. That says it's very difficult to read. That's because it's Latin. Yes, it would be. Keyword density is low because I haven't really done very much on that. There's no images. Page title is a bit short. Not got any outbound links, no subheadings, but the keyword phrase appears in the title, so you can see these change from red as warnings, amber as okayish, and green as fine. And you can follow through the recommendations as you see fit, really. Advanced, generally you wouldn't go into here. The defaults are fine. But what this means is you can go right the way down to page level and say, set the robots text, various meta tags on the page, so you can, if you want the whole page to be no follow, it can be useful if it's a link off to other sites you don't really care about. Leave it, normally it's indexed, but if you again didn't want it indexed by the search engines, and that's only a recommendation, so don't rely on that, you can change that, and you can do those, and if what I was doing to highlight more than one, you can hold the control key down to do more than one. So none of those, including the sitemap auto detect, which comes back to the settings we set earlier. Sitemap priority, do it automatically, because you're never going to do that. I don't. It's only a recommendation anyway. Google will totally ignore it. Canonical is something that basically it can be important, but it probably isn't. If you're not doing almost identical pages, then you won't use that. If you are, then just read up on it, because it's longer than I can explain in the video and most people won't need it. 301 redirect. What that means is if you had an old page that was still linked to by people but is now out of date and it's now been replaced by a new page, I don't know if it's last year's packages that you're offering and now you want to redirect to this page, this year's packages, and you've changed the page name, then you'd use that 301 redirect box. Related posts, yet another related post plugin will do, and then the publish button will actually make that live on the site. Sometimes takes a little while, but not very long usually. View post. There we have the first page on our site. A couple of other things you can do on that, but we'll show you those in next but one video. So that's as easy as it is, and if you make any changes to that page, you'll see that the publish button changes to update. So we'll come back to, we'll do a bit more on posts in the next video. Okay, a few more things we're going to do on this post. First one is add one of those things. Hover over it, it says insert more tag. I'll show you why this matters in a minute, but basically after about the first paragraph or so, insert a more tag, because what that'll do, basically I'll explain it later properly, but basically what it'll do, on the front page of your site you're just going to show an excerpt from the post, and that defines where the excerpt is. It gives you control over it rather than letting some software do. Next up, one of the things, if you remember, Yoast said about was an image, and I'll generally add an image into the post Not always, but if I've got one that's relevant and you need to make sure that you've got the copyright for it, I'll show you a site actually now where you can get those. Just a minute. Okay, the site's called Stock Exchange, and that's actually shortened to the letters SXC, Sierra X-Ray Charlie.HU, which is H for hotel, U for uniform. It's owned by Getty Images, but obviously by the HU extension it wasn't originally then. What you can do is search for an image. So let's go image, let's be really brave. And it will bring up usually some premium results there, but you just go for the regular results. Pick on one of them, hover over it, and you can see a slightly larger image. That's cash register, that's obviously a coin of some sort, quite an old one. And that one has extra restrictions. The guy must be notified and credited, so I ignore those. Many can't be bothered to go through that process. I want to use it now or not at all. So got a nice tranquil looking scene there. Scroll down, that needs whatever. So you just scroll through, find an image that you like, and then just double check that you're allowed to. That one, standard restrictions apply, that one's fine. Now you can copy, right click and copy the image there, or you can click on it to get a really big picture, and that's what I'd normally do. It looks blurry because that's just how that particular image is, because it's focusing on that flower. And that's a really big image. If we look at image properties, image info, that's 4,000 pixels almost by 2,500 pixels. That's big. I'll download that, save it somewhere, and then add media. Now I'm not going to use that particular one. Actually I could, let's do it for simplest. Okay, I've saved that giant image. Then click your cursor where you want the image to be, and click the Add Media button. Now you can do this with PDFs, you can do it with audio files, anything, but I'm going to select that one. You can either click Select Files, or you can do Upload Files. It'll bring up the same window somewhere. Okay, I've done Select File now, and here are some I've saved earlier, including that particular one. So let's just find it. Just bear with me. That one. Click it, and it will upload. You can see the progress. It's quite fast because I'm on fast broadband. And what it will then do, it'll give it a title. Because I'm going lorem ipsum as my SEO'd word, I gave it that name. And what I'll do is change that so it's got spaces in it. Click in the Alt box and add image, if I can spell. And then you get different options here. Right align because that's what I last used. Let me just move that up a little bit. Link to a custom URL. No, it's just going to go to its ordinary one. Size medium. Insert into post. It'll put it there. And then if you hover or click on the image, you'll find two things. One gets rid of it. Don't click on that because you have to go through the whole process again. Edit image, and that brings up an editing box. There you can see the alt text to put in, link URL, link to image. So what that'll do, it's got a small image in the post and a larger one that it links to. That's good for SEO purposes. It works nicely. And then click across to advanced settings. I'll tend to put a border of 5 pixels around it. You can see Firefox has remembered that for me. And that link I've just told it to do, open in a new window and update. Open a new window just means if someone actually clicks on the image, it doesn't take them away from that post, it just opens a new tab in their browser. And if we then go down to page analysis again, you'll see that it's now said you've got an image. So that's useful. Then remember to update, otherwise WordPress doesn't always tell you to, and then whatever work you did is all in vain. These other things over here, you can, if you click publish and didn't want to, you can change it to pending review or draft. Visibility defaults to public, but if you want that post to be completely private or password protected, you can do those. Public and sticky, you're probably not going to, but you might want to, but there's better ways of doing that. And then scheduling. If you want to change the date of the post, you can change the date in there. So it knows it's January, it knows it's this year, it knows today's date, I was recording it, and it knows today's time. But you can change that and you can publish in the future, and WordPress will then just drip feed those. Formatting, don't do very much about. We've got a category of uncategorized, it's in that, but if you wanted a new category, that tags I tend not to use. Featured image I tend not to use. So that's basically it. That's all done, and if we click view post again, you'll see that the image is in there, and clicking on the image brings up a new one of that fantastically detailed thing. Okay, that's it for those. We'll then go on to pages in a minute. We've done one already, which is the contact page, but I'll show you another one, and that'll probably just about wrap it up. So see you in the next video. Okay, we're also going to add a new page to the site now. WordPress differentiates between what it calls posts and pages. Typically a page will appear in the contact bar. So if we go, in the main site navigation. So if we go to the demo site, I'll open a new tab for us, and you'll notice that we've now got home and contact. So I'm going to add another page, and actually what I'm going to do, because I want the contact page to be around about the right hand side of the menu bar, what you can do is a little thing called order. That normally defaults to nothing and it just then goes alphabetical, but if we put that to 100 and go update, and then we're going to add a new page, which is going to be, I'm going to call it all about, because whatever, and we're just going to add some waffly text. You can again change that, and we can go down to Yoast and change SEO title and whatever. That will freak because I'm not there, but it'll be fairly happy with what I'm typing there. This is just for demo purposes. You'd spend a lot more time on it than this. Now across on the right, I've got all the stuff from before with visibility, publish immediately and stuff like that. You can put it below the contact, so if you want to do menus you'd use that, so that's where you use parent. Default template, now this is going to be the front page of my site, and you either do, you've got a choice there, a front page template or a full width template with no sidebar, or the default. This is going to be the front page, so I'm actually going to call it front page template. And that's the exclude pages from navigation. That only includes on pages, not posts. So if we did another one called privacy, we'd untick that, because typically we'll put that somewhere else, out of the way, tucked, hidden, but visible. If that makes sense, it won't be on the main menu bar. So we got that, and click back to the demo site there. Move that across, so we got home, all about me and contact. That's going to change in a minute, but all about me is what we just put there, and home at the moment is just that snippet. You remember I put that more thing in there? That's where continue reading happens. Now we're about to change that, so back to the dashboard. Got one more page to add first, because this particular site I'm going to basically have as pretty much fixed pages mainly, but also a kind of news section, and I'm going to call that news section a blog just because everyone else seems to, and that's all that's going to go in there. Literally a title and a blank page. The reason for that you'll see in a minute. So that's there. If we view the page, it's boringly blank. I haven't edited out the comments, but I don't need to on that one. I do on the main about me page. So go back into there and edit, scroll down the bottom, get rid of that, update. Okay, so down across to settings, remember there was something that was called reading. Front page display is currently your latest posts. We're not going to go for that because this is kind of a more corporate-y site, or one that you want to sell from the front page on, and you just want the other stuff to support it. And the front page is going to be all about me, and the posts page is going to be the blog. That's why you leave it blank. Each article will show whatever. Let's go for summary. And at the moment there's discouraged search engines because this is completely demo site, but normally you would make sure that was unticked so that you'd allow them to go for it. Save changes, go back to the site, visit the site, and now the main page is all about me, and the blog is there with our first post on it, but only that first bit, and then the continue reading goes to the main bit. So that's how you'd set up the main site. It's actually, once you've done one or two of them, it's dead easy, and if you're not, just come back to this video. It's quite short, and just refresh your memory. But essentially it's do pages for ordinary contacts. So you do one for maybe the products you offer, one for about you, another one for something else, whatever it happened to be, and a privacy page which you're going to use the thing that it calls appearance and widgets, and there's a footer somewhere. I think it's the second front page widget area. We just play around and test it doesn't break anything, and you just put your privacy page in, and you'd use just a text thing, and a lot depends on your theme on that one. And talking of themes, we'll have a play around with the theme next. So see you in the next video. Okay, we're going to talk about themes briefly. Now, the reason I've left this till last is that although everyone frets over how their website looks, in practice you've actually got a bit of time to get this sorted out, because the most important thing in my mind is to get some content up there and get Google crawling round, because until they've done that, humans aren't going to even look at the site anyway apart from you. So you can do content first, which is what I'd suggest, and then themes soon after. The default nowadays is 2012 theme, which is, as you've seen, quite ugly. Now, to my mind, obviously change that wording, but to my mind I'm quite happy with that, because I want people to, if I'm doing a site, I want people to basically read the text, look at the images if need be, and click on links and buy stuff. But a lot of people prefer to have something that looks a little bit prettier. If you've got, like I showed you with HostGator where it installed earlier versions, you'll have probably 2010 and definitely 2011 themes there as well. If it's gone straight to version 3.5, you won't. You'll just have the 2012 theme, the one that they're happiest with recently. But any other installed themes, you can click on the thing that says Live Preview, and it does what it says on the tin. It gives you a preview of what the site would look like, and basically all that's done is change the header. But you can also change the tagline, so and that happens as it goes, but it won't save it because I'm not going to tell it to. You can change the colours, so just clicking light or dark will give you that. Personally, I don't like reversed out text, which is where it's white on black. I much prefer black and white, it's easier to read. The layout, content to the left is standard nowadays, don't change that unless you're graphics designer freaks, but basically don't change it. Header image you can change. Background image, I tend not to use one, I find it distracting. Static front page is what we set on the other one, so you can cancel out of that. And then install themes. Now that will give you the standard WordPress search, and it's very easy to get distracted on there for ages. You can do all sorts of things. I find that those tend to narrow them down quite a lot, but you can search for a keyword, search for newest if you're one of these people that prefers newest, and you can preview any of those. And so you choose one that you think looks okay, you can preview it, and it now previews you what your current site would look like ish. on that, close out of that, and you go through, and as I said, you can spend hours, or you can find a graphics designer who will just design you a site for however much money you want to pay them. They're all over the place on pricing, ranging from very, very cheap to very, very expensive and all points in between. And you just tell them you want a WordPress design. Or you can go to a site like Theme Forest, which the URL for this will be in the PDF that accompanies this course. As you can see, there's 8,000 at the time of viewing, and you can search by WordPress, which is what you want. Now these are themes that other people will have used. That's fair enough. Again, you can choose whatever, so you want a corporate look, you can go for that. It doesn't much matter with the fact that other people have used it. You won't be the only one in the world. There's millions upon millions of websites out there. And if you're going to search, it'll default by date. Don't do that. If you want a shortcut, go by sales. So you find the site designs that have been, and they're roughly $50 at Theme Forest. They're not much different. Some are $45, some are $40, but most are $50, $55. And then you can preview that and see why other people like it. And you've got screenshots, live previews, all sorts of things, and a sales pitch on what it does. So if you're stuck for a theme, Theme Forest is a good place to start if you can't find one in the default themes, but there are loads of those, and some, again, if we go for a search, one word I often just type in is premium, because those tend to be slightly more corporate-y, that particular one. But a premium theme isn't premium because WordPress will only link to ones that are free or start free, and then you have the option of paying more. So that particular one looks like a very good slideshow type one, very standard modern design. You can install it literally by clicking install, and you can activate. Doesn't matter, you can always go back to the previous one. So that's now activated. Demo site, visit the site. That's as quick as it was to change the look and feel of the WordPress site. I don't particularly like that design, but that's fine. You can do that regularly, and you just go back and reinstall 2012, wherever that's gone to. Activate. That's how you change the look and feel of WordPress. So now you know everything that you need to know. If you don't, there's a few places you can go for support. One is Fiverr, where there's people that will sort out any WordPress problem you've had. Often for just $5, sometimes for 2 or 3 lots of $5, it varies. Or you can search YouTube, there's tutorials on WordPress coming out of your ears. But this will give you 95% upwards of what you need to know, and the other 5% will be individual to you, so you'll need to find what you need to find, if that makes sense. But thanks for watching, and if you've got any general questions, drop me an email. I'll do my best to reply or point in the right direction. Okay, thank you very much.